If you've been paying attention to the car market in the United States lately, you've probably noticed something interesting. No matter where you look, city streets, highways, parking lots, there's one car that just keeps showing up over and over again. And that car is the Honda Civic. Now here's the real question. Why is everyone buying it? Is it actually that good? Or are people just following the crowd? Because the truth is, the Honda Civic has built a reputation over decades. Reliable, efficient, practical. But at the same time, it's also one of the most misunderstood cars on the road. Some people think it's the perfect daily driver. Others think it's overrated. And then there's another group, people who see the Civic as something completely different, a platform. A car you can modify, tune, transform into something way more exciting than what it is stock. And if you've ever seen the early street racing scene in The Fast and the Furious, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. But today, we're not just talking about the image. We're breaking down the reality. We're going deep into everything that matters. Engine options, horsepower, torque 0 to 60 performance, fuel economy and miles per gallon, driving experience, comfort, technology, reliability, maintenance costs in the US, and most importantly, whether the Honda Civic is actually worth your money in 2026. The Honda Civic is not just a car. It's one of the most important vehicles ever sold in America. Since its introduction decades ago, the Civic has become a symbol of something very specific: smart buying. This is the car people choose when they want something that just makes sense. Not too expensive, not too flashy, but extremely well balanced. And that balance is exactly why it sells so well. But here's where things get interesting. Because unlike something like a Toyota Camry, the Civic has always had a slightly different personality. It's smaller, a bit more engaging to drive, a little more youthful, and that's a big part of its appeal. The Civic has been around since the 1970s, and over time, it evolved from a tiny economy car into one of the most versatile platforms in the entire automotive world. In the 90s and early 2000s, it became a legend in car culture. Lightweight, easy to modify, affordable. That combination made it a favorite for tuning. People started adding turbo kits, cold air intakes, aftermarket exhaust systems, AQ tuning modules, suspension upgrades, wide-body kits, and suddenly, a simple economy car turned into something fast and aggressive. That's why even today, the Civic still carries that dual identity. It can be a simple daily driver or a serious project car, and very few cars can do both. Now let's talk about what really matters. The engines. Because this is where the Civic proves why it's so popular. In the United States, the modern Honda Civic 2024 to 2026 models typically comes with two main engine options. First, the 2.0-liter naturally aspirated four-cylinder engine. This engine produces around 158 horsepower and about 138 pounds-ft of torque. Now, on paper, that doesn't sound impressive. And honestly, it isn't. But here's the thing. It's not trying to be. This engine is built for reliability and efficiency. It's smooth, predictable, and extremely durable. 0 to 60 miles per hour comes in at around 8.5 seconds. So no, it's not fast. But it's consistent. And for daily driving, it gets the job done. Then you have the more interesting option. The 1.5-liter turbocharged four-cylinder engine. This is where the Civic starts to feel different. You get around 180 horsepower and about 177 pounds-feet of torque. That torque comes in earlier thanks to the turbo, which means the car feels quicker in real-world driving. 0 to 60 miles per hour drops to around 7 seconds. And that difference is noticeable. This engine makes the Civic feel more alive, more responsive, more fun, and then there's the performance version. The Civic C and the Civic Type R. The C pushes around 200 horsepower with a manual transmission, while the Type R, that's a completely different beast. Over 300 horsepower. Aggressive tuning, track-focused performance. But for most buyers in the US, we're talking about the standard Civic. And in that category, Honda did a very smart thing. They gave buyers a choice. Reliable and simple, or efficient and slightly sporty. This is one of the biggest reasons people choose the Civic fuel economy. The 2.0L engine delivers around 31 mpg city, 40 mpg highway. The 1.5 liters turbo gets around 33 mpg city up to 42 mpg highway and in real-world driving. Those numbers are actually achievable, sometimes even better. And in the US, where people commute long distances every day, this matters a lot. You save money every single week, and over time, that adds up. Now we need to talk about the brand. Because a huge part of the Civic's success comes from Honda. Honda has built a reputation for making engines that last, not just for a few years, but for hundreds of thousands of miles. It's not uncommon to see Civics with 200,000 miles, 300,000 miles, still running strong. And that's exactly why people trust this car. Another big advantage? Parts availability. Honda uses similar components across multiple models, which means parts are easier to find, repairs are usually cheaper. Mechanics already know how to work on them, and in the US, that's a huge advantage, because labor costs can get expensive. So having a car that's easy to fix matters more than people think. Now this is where the Civic really separates itself. Compared to something like a Camry, the Civic is more engaging. The steering feels tighter. The car feels lighter. More connected to the road. It's still comfortable, but it doesn't feel lazy, and that balance is hard to achieve. Because most cars are either comfortable and boring or fun but uncomfortable, the Civic sits right in the middle. The suspension setup is tuned for balance. You get McPherson struts in the front multi-link rear suspension, which gives you stability at higher speeds, good cornering ability, smooth ride over bumps. It's not a sports car, but it's definitely more fun than most cars in its class. So at this point, everything sounds pretty good, right? Reliable, fuel efficient, affordable, good to drive. So why are some people still hesitant? Because the Civic is not perfect. And in part 2, we're going deeper into the real downsides, common complaints, maintenance reality in the US interior, and tech expectations, who should buy it, who should avoid it, and most importantly, is it actually worth the price in 2026? Now let's get real about the Honda Civic, because this is where most people start to see both sides of the story, and this is exactly where your decision can either be very smart or something you might regret later. Because even though the Civic is one of the most balanced cars you can buy in the United States, it is not perfect, and understanding its weaknesses is just as important as understanding its strengths. So let's start with one of the most common complaints, and that is the interior experience, because while the Civic has improved a lot in recent years, especially with the newer models that look more modern and cleaner, some buyers still feel like it doesn't fully match the competition in terms of premium feel. Especially when you compare it to brands like Hyundai or Kia that are pushing a lot of technology and flashy design into their interiors. The Civic is more minimal, more functional, and for some people that's great, but for others it feels a little too simple for the price. And that leads directly into the next point, which is technology, because while the Civic does offer things like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, digital displays, and driver assistance features, the system itself is not always the fastest or the most visually impressive compared to newer competitors. It works well, it's reliable, but it doesn't always feel cutting edge. And in today's market, where people expect their cars to feel like smartphones, that can be a downside depending on your expectations. Now let's talk about comfort, because this is an area where the Civic does a good job overall. The seats are comfortable, the driving position is excellent, visibility is good, and for daily commuting, it's a very easy car to live with. But it's still a compact sedan, so rear seat space is not as generous as larger cars like midsize sedans. And if you frequently carry passengers in the back, especially adults, that's something you will notice over time. Road noise is another factor. The Civic is reasonably quiet, especially in newer models, but it's not luxury level quiet. At higher speeds, you will hear some road and wind noise, which again is normal for this category, but important to mention if you're expecting a more premium experience. Now let's move into maintenance and ownership costs in the United States, because this is where the Civic really shines. Maintenance is generally affordable. Oil changes, brake pads, tires, all of these are relatively low cost compared to larger or luxury vehicles. Parts are widely available. And because of how popular the Civic is, almost every mechanic knows how to work on it, which keeps labor costs reasonable. And this is a huge advantage over time, especially if you plan to keep the car for many years. Reliability also plays a massive role here. Honda has built its reputation on durable engines and long-lasting components. And while no car is perfect, the Civic has a strong track record of reliability, especially when properly maintained. That being said, there are some known issues in certain model years. For example, earlier versions of the 1.5 turbo engine had reports of oil dilution in colder climates, which caused concern among some owners. Honda addressed this with updates, but it's still something that comes up in discussions, and it's important to be aware of it if you're buying used. Another thing to consider is that turbocharged engines, while more efficient and powerful, can sometimes require more attention over time compared to naturally aspirated engines. So if your priority is maximum long-term simplicity, the 2.0-liter engine might be the safer choice. Now let's talk about the overall ownership experience, because this is where the Civic becomes very easy to recommend. This is a car you can drive every day without thinking too much about it. It starts every morning. It doesn't surprise you with random issues. It's predictable in a good way. And for most people, that's exactly what they want. Now let's talk about resale value, because this is something a lot of buyers overlook. The Civic holds its value extremely well in the US market, which means when you decide to sell or trade it in, you're likely to recover a good portion of your initial investment. And that makes a big difference in the long-term cost of ownership. Now let's talk about who this car is actually for, because this is the most important part of the decision. If you are a student, a young professional, someone commuting daily, or simply someone who wants a reliable, efficient, and easy-to-own vehicle, the Civic is one of the best choices you can make. It's also great for people who want a car that can grow with them, because you can keep it stock and enjoy its practicality. Or you can modify it and turn it into something more exciting. And that flexibility is something very few cars offer. However, if you are looking for a luxury experience, maximum interior space, or a very powerful performance-focused car, the standard Civic might not meet your expectations in that case. You might need to look at higher segments or different models now. Let's answer the main question. Is the Honda Civic worth it in 2026 in the United States? And the answer is yes. For most people, it absolutely is, especially when you consider its price range, fuel efficiency, reliability, and resale value. It delivers a very strong overall package, but it's not perfect. And it's important to understand that what makes the Civic great is not that it excels in one specific area, but that it performs well in almost every category, and that balance is what keeps it at the top of the market year after year. So in my opinion, if your goal is to buy a smart, dependable, and efficient car that you can trust long-term, the Civic is one of the best options available. But if you're expecting something exciting, luxurious, or dramatically different, you might want to explore other options. Because at the end of the day, the Honda Civic is not about emotion. It's about making a smart decision, and for millions of buyers in the United States, that's exactly why they keep choosing it.